Everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We are lucky to be joined by some very incredible guests. We have with us the one and only Rick Stanton. We have Captain Mitch Torrel. And we have the editor of the film, Bob.
Eisenhardt.
And we have one of the directors of the film, Vasarhelyi. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Chai, I wanted to start with you. You and your husband, Jimmy, make these amazing movies about people who do seemingly impossible things. Meru, Free Solo, and now this. I'm curious, as this story was unfolding, and certainly after the rescue itself happened, how quickly did you know that this had to be the subject of your next film?
Well, I think if we all think back to that summer in 2018, it was a pretty tricky and kind of difficult political time in the world. And I think, like many people, Jimmy and I were just riveted by the story and kind of living through the lows and then the highs. And just, this idea of so many different people coming together and achieving the impossible was something that was very moving to us. And, sadly or ironically, it's only become more poignant, I think, through the pandemic. This idea of like how to be your best self and like these acts of generosity and absolute morality. So, but it was a hot story. So a lot of people were trying to tell the story. And we were lucky enough that National Geographic ended up with the rights, and we had inherited from another filmmaker, and asked them if we could make it.
And after your previous films, I imagine that was an easy decision on their part to
yeah.
give you the green light.
But there was also like this Asian part of it too, where like there are very few positive representations in nonfiction of Asian people, and Jimmy and I knew that we knew that we could listen closely.
And just speaking to the spirit of the people that we meet in this film and the generosity and the empathy that makes this rescue possible, Rick, I have to ask you that, we see in the film that you learn about the situation and then 12 hours later, if that, are on a plane, business class, but still, flying to Thailand to participate in the rescue. Was there even a moment over the course of that day where you thought twice about this, where you hesitated, or you just knew it had to be you?
Absolutely not. I mean, right from the moment I heard about the rescue, and before we'd got the go-ahead or knew that the Thai authorities were reaching to us, we were actually trying to reach out to them and say, look, we're here. We believe we can make a difference. We believe we have the experience to be of benefit to you. So absolutely no hesitation at all.
And Captain Torrel, you are there, I would imagine, already with your regiment, and you are working with the Thai SEALs, and then this gaggle of British men stroll in middle age. They are civilians. They walk in like they are in Armageddon, going to blow up the asteroid. What did you and your your military types feel about this? What were your first impressions of these men?
So I think we show up in uniform. You got John and Rick in their holy attire, and initially you look at them, but it was very apparent right away after talking to them that they knew exactly what they were talking about, and they had a certain level of expertise that we didn't intrinsically have within our group, and so rolling them in was a no-brainer.
And this is in part a film about the wisdom of trusting people's expertise, I would say, which is something, another one of its many valuable lessons. And Bob, your expertise is on full display in this movie in ways that are invisible a lot of the time in the editing of the film, and particularly what fascinates me are the recreations, which are so seamlessly interwoven into the movie that I think I can only speak for myself, but you forget that there were recreations and that Rick and his fellow divers weren't just down there with cameras shooting in beautifully lit HD at all times. And I'm guessing that wasn't the case. Can you talk about the challenges of cutting this together, and especially, the archival footage, the footage that existed, but also the recreations and just finding that right balance to sort of make people believe their eyes?
The biggest problem with the film was that it was an incredible story, but no footage. even though the global press covered it, they covered it from a distance, and they had stand-up reporters telling you what was happening. So there really wasn't the close look. I mean, we're used to doing cinema verite, where we're right next to the person all the time. That wasn't. We didn't have that ability here. So we knew it would have to be recreated. Some of it would have to be recreated. Luckily, there was some footage that we had heard of. Everybody had seen a little bit of the kids being first found, and that all belonged to the Thai Navy SEALs. They had 25, they had given their divers 25 cameras, you know, and they were shooting almost all the time. So we knew there might be a lot of footage there. And they spent about 2 years negotiating for that footage. And we finally got it. The bad news was we got it 3 weeks after we locked picture, after we finished the film. So then we had to start, in a sense, over again. But that was extremely valuable footage of that and the Royal Thai Army, which had the footage that kind of gave you the bigger sense of the scale of the thing, which was really important to us. And so we had to do the recreations. We knew we had to do them. And so these guys merely did what they did in the Thai cave when they rescued the kids.
And Rick, was that a surreal experience for you? Was it fun even? Was it recreating this incredibly thrilling and frightening experience?
One of the reasons we signed up for the documentary was to showcase what we had done and how we had affected the rescue. So when we went to the underwater studio to demonstrate, we were keen and pleased to do it. So, to show the world what had happened in water where you couldn't see further than that. So, that was the whole point and the whole aim of our intent to sign for this documentary.
And Chai, I would love to talk a little bit about the Thai people in the film, particularly the football team themselves. I'm just blown away by how calm and collected they seem given the circumstances, and also by the coach. And I'm curious. I know that there's only so much footage of the kids in their film. I would argue it's the perfect amount and really gives you such a really beautiful insight into who they were and what it was like down there. But can you speak to or Rick, maybe if you'd like to as well, really any of you, the dynamic between those people and how to what you would owe their ability to cope in that situation?
Well, when I finally was able to go to Thailand, I did have the privilege of walking the whole cave as well as meeting Coach Ek and several of the children. And I have to say, Meru, our previous film, Jimmy is a professional climber, and they almost starved to death in Meru. And I know about this idea of fantasy, you role play about what you would like to eat. You fantasize about having a steak. And so I just asked. I was talking to the kids about their experiences, and the thing that I just kind of floored me, especially as a parent, was they would role play, and where one kid would play their parents and their mom and their dad, and so that it just was to give some comfort. They'd pretend to be each other's parents, and these are poor kids. They're from they're from a minority in Northern Thailand. Their parents are for the most part day laborers, and they're tough. So, and I think that, Coach Ek did teach them how to meditate. He was a former monk. But I think also at a certain point, they were just completely depleted from the experience. I mean, they were starving and emotionally drained. But also I think there's a certain stoicism in the Thai culture. There's a certain reserve. And that comes across with great dignity in the images you see of them.
And in addition to that, of course, they were a football team that had been playing together for years. They were a very tight-knit group, and they obviously bonded even greater in the cave. And I've seen them since, and they were still a tight-knit group playing games and joking and laughing with everyone. So that played a huge part. But also they made some I say they played a huge yet passive part in their own survival. They made some They didn't make active decisions really, but just by their nature, their stoicism, their calmness, played a huge factor in their survival. I'm pretty sure that most young teenagers in America wouldn't be able to survive 10 days without the internet, let alone food.
Or most adults, I mean, for
I was
that
gonna
matter.
say, yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, not just the teenagers.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you were talking to me before and saying, you don't know what you are capable of until it's thrust upon you, and I fear that I do, and that it's not this. But Bob, your wife was telling me that there was a special, because the coach is such a remarkable character and is obviously so integral to how they survive. But there was a particular reason why he elected to not go last. To be rescued. I'm not sure if Rick or Chai or whomever would like to speak to that, but
well, what we thought happened was that the coach was giving away his rations to the other kids, and he was, of course, bigger, and so he needed more food, not less food. And I think the Thai Navy SEALs were the people who were choosing who was to go, and I think they chose him to go, the first person on the last day.
And just to Rick and to Mitch, this movie, it does such an incredible job of capturing what happened and all the remarkable details. But there must have been things about this experience, whether it was the long nights and waiting and the uncertainty, that no film could hope to capture as viscerally as this one does everything. Was there a part of that experience that sticks with you, that is hard to relate, that is a defining memory of sorts?
One of the hardest things to convey is just the relationships that we were able to build across both language and cultural divides. I mean, my team and we had the opportunity to work with John, Rick. We had the opportunity to work with people from China, from Thailand, from the UK, from Belgium, from Canada, from so many different countries, and being a part of that emotionally binding experience. I mean, it's still a brotherhood and a sisterhood with the people who were involved in that.
So when Mitch and I saw it for the first time early this month, we both said to each other, 3 years on after the event, how preposterous the whole plan seemed to us in the cold light of day. And that sort of comes across, and the whole nature of what we did is the reality of it, even to us, who were the main principal planners, was just amazing.
Have either of you had an opportunity to meet you've met, of course, but to meet the boys again since then?
Yes, I have. I saw them 6 months after the event in a monastery in Thailand. They're all in good spirits, all fine. And what most people find incredulous is that they still go in the cave for fun. This time they normally go with Vern, so that they are in safe hands. He looks after them in the cave, and they've got a bit of experience to tell them when and when not to go.
According to Wikipedia, which is something that always gets its facts completely right, you were inspired to be a cave diver by a documentary that you saw when you were a teenager. Is there some part of you that hopes, or when this opportunity came along, you were consciously thinking of that being in this movie might help sort of perpetuate the sport or lifestyle or hobby or whatever you want to call it to someone out there who might see it and think, I'm just crazy enough to want to do that?
Well, it would be a certain poetic irony if that was so, and I hope it is. But on the other side of it, I don't want it to attract everyone. I mean, I was very fortunate that when I saw this documentary, I was 18 years old, and it absolutely resonated with me. And I said, that's what I want to do. And I followed that with a passion for the whole of my life, and it led to this point of the rescue, which you could never have predicted. So you're always going to need people, maybe, to be able to fill our shoes. So yes, if it allows for that, then correct.
I don't think you have to worry about the caves of our world being clogged with divers after seeing this film, but maybe one or two. Are there any questions in the audience? I can't see out there very well, but if you raise your hand and stand up, if there's anything anyone out there would like to ask. we can get a microphone to you. Or do we have a shy crowd? I got more. We can keep going. um, I mean, take your time. We'll keep looking. But Chai, while we're waiting, I just wanted to ask, the way you talk about this movie and the obstacles that you encountered along the way sounds similar to the way that the rescue itself is discussed, and sort of the filmmaking process having an analog, obviously slightly lower stakes. But did the process of making the movie on a purely logistical level and just the blessings in disguise and the challenges and the obstacles give you a greater appreciation for the rescue itself?
Yes. What we encountered in trying to, let's say, negotiate with the Thai Navy SEALs, like the cultural differences, the cultural differences. I mean, it really underlined what some of the obstacles were for the actual rescuers, and also how extraordinary it was that everyone overcame those obstacles to work together, like irregardless of background, irregardless of what languages you spoke. I would say though, there are things about this story which are, I don't know, they're like too fortuitous, they're too coincidental. And, one of the anecdotes I particularly, I don't know, enjoy, or like it. So you see Kurumbuchum the monk in the film. After the children were successfully rescued, he took a 3-year oath of silence and went into a cave in Myanmar. Hence, he was not available to be interviewed. He's the only person I really wanted to talk to, and they're like, no. And I was like, can we bring a whiteboard? No.
Do you know when that vow of silence ends? Because I could go and
it ended this summer, like 3 years after the rescue. So it ended in July, and but he did send us those bracelets. So we have a bunch of like the blessed bracelets that we have around. So I felt like he finally again came full circle and communed with me.
It's incredible.
May I have one, please?
Yes.
Was there someone out there who a mic went to?
Hi, my name is Diana. Okay. So first I wanted to say I'm really pleased as a person from Southeast Asia. I'm not from Thailand, I'm from Malaysia, but I thought it would have been so easy for you to not have included all the spiritual stuff, and I thought you handled it really delicately, and I really appreciated that. But my question from a storytelling standpoint, I'm an aspiring journalist, so I'm really curious to know how you decided to tell the story, because it's a story that everyone knows the ending to versus Free Solo. You couldn't have been 100% sure what happens in the end while you were making the film. So because everyone already knows how the story ends, how does that change the way you think about telling the story?
Well, I think it's just another one of the challenges of this story, right? But the story is so rich, and its importance transcends the actual events, in that, I remain moved by the absolute morality that the divers and all the volunteers and the participants showed. In that, if you're the only people in the world who can do something, and you're still going to risk everything and try to save 13 people you've never met before. And it's this idea of being your best self, of, being generous, doing the right thing. And so, the trick in the storytelling was we just wanted to try to allow people to see through, to experience and live through that experience, and hopefully take away some of these thoughts and feelings and kind of lessons. But yeah, it makes it really hard. But we still go see Cinderella. I don't know.
My question is, obviously, it seemed in the movie that the Thai government was relatively hesitant of relinquishing the responsibility onto other countries, Americans, the Brits, and whatnot. And then, with it being a successful story, obviously it's very near and dear to their country. Was there a consultation with the Thai government, or did they have a strong opinion on how the story was presented? Their standpoint. I know you mentioned that it was relatively difficult to get the footage, which is curious as to that aspect.
I mean, you see members of the Thai Army as well as members of the Thai Navy SEALs interviewed, and yes, they're all government actors. But no one tried to influence how we told the story. They just did share their they shared their first person accounts. So, yeah, yeah, and also, everyone, like, all those blurred faces are because they're special forces, active duty special forces who are still engaged in the field. But yeah, I mean, we worked very closely, and really, I think what was special was that we were kind of the only people who spoke to a lot of the different participants, and it was like kind of amazing when everyone would agree on the facts, because you just knew, like, you were coming at it from all the points of view, and everyone was agreeing on the same account.
It's interesting. I mean, I meant to ask you about that. The obviously, I would imagine no one is going to be misleading you out of negative intention. But were there, as you got the multitude of different stories and accounts of what had happened, were there interesting points of difference between some of the stories that you had to sort of smooth out?
Sure. Sure. Yes. But also, you just have to remember, like, the story was so fractured because there were people inside the cave, people outside the cave. Um, Everyone thinks they know the story, but no one was actually inside the cave from the public. Only 10 people actually went beyond Chamber 3, and those are the divers. And, but that was kind of the crazy thing. Like, again, one of these, like, fortuitous things around this film is, like, Harry actually filmed him anesthetizing a child. Like, that, who knew? And, like, the Thai Navy SEALs had the footage of John and Rick emerging into Chamber 3 after having found the kids. Like, these are, like, these pivotal moments. Same thing, finding the children. The children receiving food for the first time, or just those you see them, like, on the stretchers, anesthetized, and, like, they're just those moments that are real. But yeah, everyone had a different opinion, and I think that Jimmy and I have different opinions from waking up next to each other every morning. I was like, anyway. Anyway.
The only scene you don't have is the one that Rick batted the camera away at the right before the rescue itself.
Well, I mean, so when Rick and I first saw the film together, there's that scene at the end where they're like, "Are you filming?" And the guy's like, puts it away. And Rick was like, "You know what? We should have really let him keep on filming. It would have been a great scene." And I was like, "Thank you." Yeah.
You guys already had an overabundance of footage. You could have just. Who needed more? Are there any more questions out in the audience?
So Rick, here's a question for you. You obviously had a lot of experience diving in caves, I think in Somerset, but this was on a whole other level. So way past any training or any experience that you've done. So where did you go to in your mind and in your emotions as you tried to effect this rescue? And when the idea came up for taking the children out in the way that you did, were there any ideas that you didn't take on? Or was this the only idea that was in any way useful?
I'm going to answer your last point first. People ask us, what if you were to do it again, what would you do differently? And the answer is actually nothing. I think we pretty much had it all covered. The only thing we would have liked to have done at the time, and it would have had no change on the actual rescue strategy, was just to have, when we went to the swimming pool to practice our techniques, it would have been really useful to have sedated one of the boys that volunteered to be a casualty. But that really had no impact on the actual rescue. It had just given us more confidence at the time, because no one had ever been sedated underwater before. But to go to your point about our experience, we have done a lot of dives in England, and the caves are particularly small, cold, unpleasant, muddy, treacherous, and all the rest of the things. But also, and that's the sort of training you needed. That's all transferred very, very well to Thailand. But we also have dived all over the world in all sorts of conditions, and I've been to other caves in Thailand, although I haven't dived them. But our group, the group that really came in and the spearhead of this, we're known to go to caves, these caves that we've never had any experience of, and go straight to the end and explore them. Exploring is our main activity. So we, because of that, we have been the go-to people to call for rescue, because we're the one that most likely to get to the end and do whatever needs doing without drama. So we do have a lot of experience in progressing through caves, and I would always say that if on a rescue you want to be operating in the cave at a level much less than you've operated for fun for yourself, and I would actually say that's true in this cave. We have been in flooded caves, we have been flooded in caves, so and we've been a lot further, a lot deeper, lots of other things. I mean, there was a whole load of special events that came together in Thailand. The fact that there were 13 lives that were absolutely at risk, and the threat of the monsoon rain, and the oxygen clock ticking downwards. But also, of course, we have been involved in other rescues. So our process is to process problems. It's just breaking every event down into tiny little things and mitigating against them, so that you really don't have as much fear as you're alluding to.
And just to wrap up as a final question, Rick, and this is a question I'll actually open to all of you, but one of the divers in the film early on says that they are motivated to become a diver and to continue to be a diver in an effort to prove themselves against any of the doubting voices in their heads or any of the people who had told them there were limitations and what they could do. And I wonder, after an experience like this, any of you really, whether artistically or physically or what it was in the process, if there was anything left to prove that you feel after accomplishing this, or if you could find some measure of peace.
Well, I would say we'd proved ourselves, in the decades leading up to the rescue. But what I think the rescue actually did is vindicated our decision to pursue this ridiculous pastime for our own ends, for our own entertainment, and we're able, with our knowledge and skills that we'd gained at our own expense, to give something back to society and use it to save lives.
I think I've been very blessed to be surrounded by people I work with who are giants among men, who have been dealt just troves and troves of heroicism. And so I'm very blessed every day to walk amongst the brothers and sisters in arms that I get to experience. And so for me, that is very humbling, where I know people who walk to the right and left of me both have been in very dire circumstances.
Well, I mean, I found all these divers to be fascinating, and I think what it says in the end is that if you follow your passion, you'll succeed. Somewhere down the line, you'll succeed.
I mean, just to expand on that, it became a calling for them, right? Like, it's not just like a weekend warrior hobby anymore. The past 40 years prepared Rick for that one moment. But it really still comes down to character at the end of the day. Like, they didn't have to do that, but they chose to do that. And I think that's just like kind of the lasting question. Like, are we doing enough? Am I doing enough? Are we generous enough? Do we do the right thing? Because I think if we all did, we'd be in a very different place with this pandemic. And I don't know, it's humbling to be able to share their story.
Well, you share it brilliantly, and it's a brilliant story to share. Thanks to all of you. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and please join me in thanking our panel.